seasons. But perhaps most of all, the constant resurgence and renewal of life. Life, symbolized in the soaring symphony of a rainbow. And at the rainbow's end, the legendary pot of gold, a golden flower. Life, born of the rain and the rainbow, transforming the desert wasteland into a garden of glowing fire. Life, epitomized by the eternal miracle of the flowers, the wildflowers of the West. Nowhere in the processes of nature is the resurgence of life and the will to live more apparent than in the western wildflower, which literally lives everywhere, under all conditions. This is desert, the deep desert, searing hot and cinder dry. Here in sun without shade, every living thing, every flower, seems to endure the smoldering day, if only to stay alive until the coming of another sunset. Far different is the climate of the western valleys, and different the plant life. Here in a profusion of color, the wildflowers burst into springtime bloom, walking the valley hills, trailing beauty in their wake. As for the flowers by the western sea, where the far waters roll out to meet the sky, other blooms are blossoming, green and golden in the sun. On sandy shores below, beach blossoms spread their own brightening hues. With each 1,000 feet in elevation, the climate changes. It's like traveling north several hundred miles. High above the sea, the wildflowers of the mountains kindle the far meadows with the living colors of another spring. Beside a snow-fed waterfall, the flowers climb in gleaming ranks or cool their stems in the melting snows. Man has subdivided the far west into states, and from thousands upon thousands of western species of wildflowers, each state has chosen its own official flower. Arizona, state of scenic grandeur. The Grand Canyon alone is a mighty wonder of the western world. Monument Valley, born of forgotten centuries, rises in fantastic splendor out of the deep silences of the ages. No wonder they call Arizona the Sunset State, when her evening skies come alive with pictures drawn in painted fire. How could any state find a flower to match all this bigness, this beauty? Arizona did. The saguaro cactus, giant of the desert, growing as high as 50 feet, living as long as 200 years. And the saguaro blossom, it was a fitting crown for the desert king. The saguaro, state flower of Arizona. Farther west, California, aptly named the Golden State. Not because of the gold they found way back in '49. Not the Golden Gate the 49ers called their own. Not even the golden age of the redwoods, like tremendous towers against the sky. No, not any of these had to do with the naming of the Golden State, but an incident of history. When the seafaring Spaniards first looked upon the hills of California, they saw hills that blazed with gold. And so to the golden poppy goes the fame for christening the Golden State and becoming the official state flower. Nevada, the Silver State. Nevada, land of sun and sand and shining distances, where the biggest little city is all of that, and the glittering lights of a magic town make a beacon in the night. Here Lake Mead spreads its watery acres across a vast domain which once was desolate sand. It seemed only natural that the sagebrush, made famous by many a Western song and story, should become the state flower of enterprising Nevada. North of California is the coastal state of Oregon, the green and celebrated beaver state, named for this industrious native of the mountain stream. Oregon, land of the forest primeval, of blue crater lakes and tall timber, a land where great rivers roll in majestic tide on their journey to the sea. Official flower of the beaver state is the Oregon grape, blossoming yellow in the summer. In the winter, its holly-shaped leaves adorn many a Christmas wreath. The state of Idaho is famed for many things, among them Sun Valley, paradise of the sportsman's dream, a scenic wonderland second to none. Idaho, the very name sings of Indian legend and sky-blue water. Delicate as a bridal bouquet is Idaho's official flower, the syringa, whose bursting buds fill the first days of spring with fragrant perfume. The state of Washington, in the extreme northwest part of the country, is renowned for its thriving cities, its sweeping miles of forests, its snow-crowned mountains and verdant valleys. Beautiful as the evergreen state herself is Washington's official flower, the royal rhododendron, queen of wildflowers. Thus the states of the far west, and the state flowers of their choice. Just what is this fragile bit of life and color man calls a flower? What makes it grow? How does it survive and reproduce? It begins with a seed, mysterious source of life since time immemorial. Nurtured by the rain, warmed by the light and heat of the sun, until the seed becomes a plant, first a shoot, then a stalk, which brings forth leaves and buds, and finally a flower, a wildflower, ever a bit of wonder to behold. The flower fades and reverts to the seed from which it came. Now begins one phase of the great process of propagation. The wind goes to work as a carrier of the seed, scattering it near and far. But the wind is but one element of propagation. The insects and the birds also help. There's the equally important task of pollination. The butterfly dusts himself in heavy pollen. The honeybee, as though drawn by some magnetic force, flies straight to land on target, which does explain why they call it a beeline. In the mountain meadow, the hummingbird, treading air among the springtime buds and blossoms, does it his way, but with the same results. Even the animals have their part as carriers of seed or pollen, which attach themselves to deer and other creatures as they pass. From the deserts to the mountains, from the ocean to the valley, each springtime finds the western wildflowers staging their own outdoor show. On the desert, the seed which has lain dormant for weeks or months comes to life, and a flower is born, miraculous and breathlessly beautiful. But all is not rooted life in this arid region. The desert is also home to the centipede and the scorpion, the deadly poisonous Gila monster, like something out of the prehistoric past. Few animals can endure the desert. Those that do must be as hardy as the environment in which they live. Quite a brotherhood, the creatures of the desert, and quite a variety, the desert wildflowers. During the months of spring, the desert is a vast garden, the flowers flourishing under almost impossible conditions. The hardy ocotillo is a familiar signpost of the desert. The prickly poppy, another plant long inured to desert sun and desert drought, has won the struggle for existence. The sand verbena, living and dying in seasonal episodes, briefly carpets the springtime dunes with floral fire. Then there's the surprisingly tough and tenacious evening primrose, another familiar desert bloom. Here also the thistles, fiercely armored, grow in wild and defiant profusion. But one of the best known of all desert plants is the Joshua tree, truly symbolic of this wilderness wasteland, spreading thorny arms in empty embrace. Beyond the deserts, in the valleys and along the coastal hills, the coyote roams, as in other times. It is here that the rabbit, the mound-building prairie dog, and their rodent relatives still live and thrive. It is here also that the rancher's cattle herds and roaming flocks of sheep graze the hills and the valley floors. The valleys are domesticated now, but the wildflowers are the same. In the foothills, the yuccas, the candles of the Lord of the exploring Spaniards, still glow in the darkness of a springtime night. By day, the coastal hills and plains are aglow with lupin, and the Indian paintbrush flames once more. Along the blue Pacific shore, poppies robe the fields in gleaming splendor. Everywhere, in the valleys and on the coastal hills, the land is bursting into bloom. In the mountains, the flowers of the heights are blossoming again, the mountain meadows kindling with the living colors of another spring, to flower on through the months of summer. In the high mountain wilderness, yellow bells are breaking through the thawing snow. Below the peaks, the snow plant sprouts from the dead roots of the pines, beautifies a wooded glade. The skunk cabbage, hardly an appropriate name for so striking a bloom, also grows in alpine meadows. The name does not pertain to the flower, but to the odor of the crushed foliage or roots. The alpine cat's ear, resembling the fuzzy ear of a kitten, is actually a member of the lily family. The season of the mountain flowers also brings forth the mountain animals. In the spring, the chipmunk leaves his home. And the black bear, a happy little character, comes out to play and see what he can see. In the cool mountain woods, the season beckons the burrowing badger, charter member of the underground. The deer also wanders his highland realm, the aristocrat of the mountains. The creatures of the wild and its flowers are everywhere. In a mountain clearing grow Queen Anne's lace, the foxglove, and many more, all adding their glowing touch to this enchanted season. So does every springtime renew the painted pageantry of the wildflowers of the West. Up in Washington, where the Cascades march in lofty ranks toward Canada, bear grass lights a mountain meadow. In Idaho's Sawtooth Range, the red columbine is bursting into flame. Along the mountain valleys in storied Oregon, the tiger lilies explode in bursts of glowing beauty. On the deserts of Nevada, the woolly marigold is blossoming in a sea of sage and sand. In Arizona, it's the bloom of the Parinolina, a giant desert lily of hill and canyon. Here, too, grows the Palo Verde, or green bark acacia, the green tree of the Spaniards, beautiful beyond description. From glacial mountain snows to the Grand Canyon of the Colorado, from the shores of the Pacific to the plains of the Western Desert, the spring is everywhere, the magician of the seasons. All this energy is generated for one great purpose: the wildflower's never-ending struggle for survival. A struggle as old as the fiery beginnings of time. Through untold millions of years, long before man, the wildflower has had to contend with its natural enemies. But where death had struck with flaming fire, there was also life, surprisingly like that of today. Life that survived the Holocaust. Where there had been only black destruction, a flower grew and lived. As more time passed, great storms swept the earth. And the rains beat down upon the flower, beating it into the very earth itself. And the land became a vast and barren desert, and savage winds howled across the whirling, empty spaces. And there was long drought, without mercy, without end. And as the earth burned, the flower withered and died. Then, after many centuries, there were snow and ice upon the mountains. And with these came freezing winter cold, another enemy of the wildflower. As time moved on, the flower perished, yet the seeds still survived. And it was strange, but not even the cataclysms of nature could destroy the flower. Thus it was long ago. Throughout its life, the wildflower has fought many natural enemies. One of these was disease. Disease sometimes transferred from plant to plant by the very creatures that help to pollinate them. As if instinctively seeking protection, the flower learned to grow in hidden places, like the appropriately named Live Forever in its rocky crevice, and the wild lilac in its protective hills. Thus, unbelievably, the wildflower survived the onslaughts of unrelenting nature. The chain of life remained unbroken, but the flower had not yet encountered man. Hostile animals and insects had failed to destroy this supposedly fragile bit of life, like the animals which sometimes feed upon the flower. These the flower had survived. But now? The first Western man of recorded history, as most of us know him, was the Indian. He wasn't a menace to the wildflower. He valued it. For his dyes, he used the colors of the flower. For his medicines, he used the roots. For food, there were plants like the saguaro, good Samaritan of the desert to man and beast alike. After the Indian came the Spaniard, bringing Christianity from the old world to the new. Next, it was the early settlers. These founders of empire also valued the wildflower. From the cliff rose or quinine bush, they brewed medicinal tea, and from other flowers, other medicines. For that pioneer salad bowl, there was always watercress and a variety of food from a variety of plants. For example, the wild onion, both edible and palatable in time of hunger. They even used the ocotillo to fence their gardens. Then came the California gold rush, and the cry was "Westward ho!" It was "Go west, young man." And he did. He hasn't stopped since. But the West was big, and the wildflowers still had plenty of growing room. It survived the trampling cattle herds that perished in desert drought. It survived the roaring boom towns of bonanza and bust. It survived the early pioneer as well as those natural enemies of the ages. But the time was coming when survival was to work the other way. As the West, modern land of promise, became the home of millions, the wildflower began a struggle for its very existence. At first, the scythe, clearing the farmer's fields. This was just the beginning. With the coming of the mechanized age, vast areas of the land lay freshly plowed, naked of weed or flower. Even the seed had been plowed under, too deep for resurrection. And eventually the land was drowned in seas of smothering grain. A fine sight, to be sure, but not for the wildflower. Near his spreading cities, man created lakes, and where once there had been acres of flowers, there were now acres of water. To connect the cities and carry their ever-growing traffic, great highways were cut through hill and mountain. And by the high millions, the flower fell before the bulldozer and the grader. Progress, they called it. And for the most part, it was necessary and good, but not for the wildflower. Year by year, mile by mile, beneath the hard-topped surfaces of a new civilization, the flower was being buried, drowned, and obliterated. Yet somehow it still survived. Beside the very highway that had decimated it, it rose to bloom again. It grew and blossomed in many strange places. Beneath the singing wires of a steel-web power line, in the ugly debris of a city dump. It has been said that man can neither create nor destroy. He can only change. That mysterious alchemy called life has ever baffled him. But man's carelessness is another thing. A single careless spark can ignite the frightful havoc of the forest fire. The flowers may grow again, but in the ugliness of dead destruction, the wanton setting of a forest fire is unforgivable. Just as is the wanton and indiscriminate picking of wildflowers by those who have no conception of that long struggle for survival. Perpetuate and enjoy the wildflowers. They belong to everyone. The wildflowers are a heritage, a possession to value and protect. Who really wants to lose the sight or memory of a flowering desert? The glow and shimmer of the flowers of the valley. Who wants to lose the pure enchantment of flowers blooming by the sea? Who can ever forget the sheer poetry of a mountain meadow in the spring? Or the blossoms of the peaks, like scattered jewels against snow? Who indeed? The flower lives and it dies, yet by some mysterious power lives again. Always it begins with a seed, blown from afar perhaps, nurtured by the rain and warmed by the sun. This is the everlasting miracle of life renewed, the miracle of the magic months of spring, when in all their fire and splendor we see once more the wildflowers of the West.